Welcome to Beyond Measure. For the outside foundation of our card, we'll use Coordination's Tim Holtz Craft Core in brown. Cut 10 inches by 7 inches and score in the middle. Cut a piece of craft cardstock 10 by 7 inches, score in the middle, and then in fourths. This is a great project in which you could put your 5 by 7 core cards into use. Just use 2, and then on the one that you're using on the inside, you'll score in fourths also. Woohoo! We get to use our Stars by Provocraft embossing folder with the Sussex Texture Boutique. Write 'em up, bring 'em in, everybody's sure to win. As you may notice, the embossing folder is not large enough to emboss our complete foundation. So because we're creating a leather effect, a worn, distressed look would be very inviting. Meaning that's the way I can get away with embossing it in this manner and having the creases to go along for texture and character. We're inking it with Black Soot Tim Holtz Distress Ink and then sanding it a bit, making sure not to sand on top of my non-stick craft mat. Yeehaw! First, we get to use the Tim Holtz Clear Embossing Ink to go over all of our embossed areas. While still wet, we'll pull in our coffee filter and dust our embossed area with the Clear Embossing Powder by Ranger. Now we get to use our Ranger Heated tool to emboss. It really melts the embossing powder and makes an awesome faux leather effect. Look at how super cool that is. Woohoo! Now we're getting to the fun part. To adhere the inner and outer shells of the card together, you may choose one of 2 different ways to do so. I'm using a Xyron runner on the inside of the outer shell, making sure to apply adhesive only to the outside fourths of the card. Or you may choose to put your adhesive on the inner shell. This is my preference because you have the score lines to go by. Notice how I butt the ends up when adhering on the Crafter's Companion Ultimate tool to ensure that it lines up beautifully. Now that your Ultimate tool is opened up to the star, take a piece of your craft cardstock and emboss the smaller star. Once you get this done, you're going to trim on the outside of the embossing. Next, notice the center marks outside of the star. When creating the K card, you need to make sure that you have a perfect center on your image. Open your card and place the center of the star on the first score line from the left. Oopsie, I got a little ahead of myself. First, we're going to add some color with some Barn Door, Mustard Seed, and Walnut Stain Distress Ink by Tim Holtz. Now is the time in which you'll get to adhere your star to the inside of the card using Scotch Quick Dry Adhesive. Just put adhesive on the underside of the right half of your star and adhere. Next, I'm using a self-healing cutting mat. You could use chipboard if you would like. To cut around the edge of the star in which you have not adhered yet, use a nice, sharp utility knife. Be careful not to cut those precious fingers. Now score down the center of the star to enable you to fold it back to be totally exposed for when the card is closed. Oh my goodness, I'm a poet and didn't know it. Now it's time to use your Scotch Quick Dry Adhesive to adhere the other side of your star together. Be sure to trim up any little teeny obstacles that might get in the way of the functioning and mechanics of the card. This amazing multifaceted cardstock is from Coordination's Vintage Collection in blue. This piece for the waistband of the jeans is cut at 10.5 by 2.25 inches. Wow, what a waistline, right? Score close to the edge on all 4 sides. You could skip this step and trim it smaller. But because of my sewing background, I do realize that there are double seams around the waistline of blue jeans. This is only the beginning to see how awesome this paper shines with embossing and technique. So on the opposite side, you're going to draw the stitches with pencil or pen. You'll do so on all 4 edges. Then spritz with alcohol and place your stitching line upon a score line on the Ultimate Tool by Crafter's Companion. Then score on the stitching lines. Pull in your scrap piece of chipboard to sand upon and reveal the awesome stitching that you just created. Well, you know, every cowboy's jeans have belt loops, so we gotta create some belt loops. Cut 4 at 3/4 of an inch by 2 1/4 inches. We'll use the same technique as we used on the waistband, scoring close to the edge, using the template to draw the stitches on the opposite side, spritz with alcohol, and score on the stitching lines. Then fold under each end. And I almost forgot to mention, make sure to sand in there too, on the edges that were scored and the stitching lines. Adhere all sides with quick dry adhesive by Scotch. After adhering, I secured my folded in edges with paper clips. In the corners of the waistband, you'll notice we clipped out a teeny little right angle. Adhere with the Scotch quick dry adhesive and then press with something of substance. And oh my goodness, we get to make our button. It's out of Add a Little Dazzle copper sheeting. Cut a little square and emboss in the Medallion Circle Fleur-de-Lis embossing folder. Get armed and dangerous with your We Are Memory Keepers Big Bite. And trim a little scrap of 3M adhesive to go on the back of your copper. Pull in your chipboard to sand upon. And next you get to use your Big Bite to punch a hole in the middle of the button. Then use your embossing tool to press in the hole even further. I'm placing just an ordinary button in the center and tracing around it with a permanent marker on the underside. Once I get it trimmed, I will take off the pink adhesive backing and adhere into place on the denim waistband of our jeans. Don't forget to use your paper stump around the edge of the metal. It gives a great professional finish. Next, punch a hole with your Big Bite through the cardstock. Well, you know, every button has got to have a buttonhole. So, fold your waistband together, make a pen marking in the hole of the button, and SCORE, score 2 lines on the sides of the pen marking to represent a buttonhole. Then cut a little line in the midst of the score lines and sand. We've got tons of other fantastic techniques. Please continue to part 2.